Toronto skyline, and you know that the buildings go up so fast, it's within a blink of an eye. It's changed again. And Brad Lamb is here. He's a real estate expert, particularly in condos. Good morning.
How are you?
Very well, thank you. Good to have you here. So we hear a lot about a condo bubble happening, but condos are your area, so we wanted to ask you if someone is still thinking of getting into that market, whether they want to buy it as their principal residence or as an investment, what are some things that you need to know?
Well, I mean, the most obvious thing is you have to determine whether you can afford to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think with what's happened in the last 10 years in Toronto, people need to have a bit of a safety net when they're buying a property, whether it's a house or a condo. Interest rates at some point will go up, and so people should make an effort to finance a property in a more safe fashion than perhaps we would have done 10 years ago.
Right. So an investment property isn't for you if you're already feeling a little stretched with your principal property.
Well, I mean, there are ways to buy investment property that perhaps wouldn't stretch you. I mean, the great thing about investment property is you have a tenant paying your costs, mm-hmm. right? So if you have a small down payment, you can buy an investment property. If you can rent it and get a positive cash flow, then your tenant's actually making all the payments for you. In fact, they're paying your mortgage for you.
Mm-hmm. What's the trend in condos these days? I know it used to be that you'd have these big buildings with a lot of amenities, and now maybe people want something a little bit smaller, a little bit more boutique.
Well, actually, it's gone back to large buildings with a lot of amenities. So when the condo market first started coming back in the late 90s, early 2000s, people were all about low condo fees, and they thought low condo fees meant no facilities. And that did work in that era because the buildings were smaller, maybe 100 to 150 units. Now, buildings like building down the street, One Bloors, is 800 units. And if you do a building with 800 units, you have to fill it with amenities. And these buildings are mostly being bought by young people, and about 40 to 50% of the spaces are rented to tenants. And tenants demand facilities. So the new trend actually now is more facilities: outdoor pools, indoor pools, squash courts, bowling alleys in some cases. Some pretty crazy stuff.
Okay, Brad, your reaction to the latest numbers. This is the headline in the Wall Street Journal. Chill continues for Toronto condo market in February. The first 14 days of February, sales went down 13% from this time last year. January was already down 5%. The value, the condo price, went down 6% to the average price of $330,000. So we're seeing a downward climb. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think what the Wall Street Journal should do is they should go back and look at just beyond last February. So, for instance,
but these are Toronto Real Estate Board numbers.
Yes, I know, but you have to analyze numbers in the right light. So last year from January to June was the best period in the history of Toronto from January to June. In fact, we had 3 months where we exceeded 10,000 sales in a single month, which we've never done ever in the history of Toronto. So you can't look at the first 6 months of last year. What you need to do is look at an average over the last 5 years of sales. And you can even throw out the sales of 2008, which were terrible because of the recession. And I think you'll see actually that sales are going to come in around 6,000 per month, or 6,000 units this month overall for housing. And that's a pretty solid year, a pretty solid month for Toronto.
So you don't think that a 6-month trend shows where the condo market is going?
No, I think that last year's 6-month trend from January to June was like an outlier. It was not a reliable take. You can't take a 6-month period. Why were people doing that? Well, people were doing that because there was a lot of rumors that Jim Flaherty was going to change the mortgage rules. So people more or less pulled the chute on buying earlier than would have done. So people that maybe would have bought in November bought in March to beat the change in lending rules, which were actually quite draconian. They changed the rules significantly for first-time buyers. So what you have to do is you can't just look at a small period of time. You need to look at the market over a long period of time. So, you know, in the decade from 2000 to 2010, we averaged between 80,000 and 95,000 homes sold in Toronto per year. This year, we're probably going to sell somewhere around 85,000 homes, which is in the middle of that grouping, which is a very solid performance. We have to stop thinking that we're going to set real estate records every year in Toronto. It's just not rational. It's not a
When are there too many condos in this city? At what point do people go, okay, this is too much, and this is not good for the overall market in general?
Right. Well, That certainly could happen, but one of the great things we have in this city is a natural break. So we don't have enough tradesmen, we don't have enough brick suppliers or crane suppliers to deliver more than 13,000 condos a year in this city. Even if we sell 26,000, which we did in 2011, we can't build 26,000 a year. So you'd said earlier that these spring up very quickly. In fact, it's a 5-year odyssey for a developer. If you build a single-family home in Brampton, it's a 1-year process. To build a high-rise building like the building down the street, that 80-story building, that's a 7-year process. So there's a great natural break that takes place in condo development. It just takes so long to do it.
Wasn't that a 7-year process because they had all sorts of financial disasters and had to stop and start all over again?
Well, it was a 7-year process because of a recession. And this is the thing, recessions happen in Canada about every 10 years. So we can't expect as developers to live without recessions in the cycle that
Right.
can take 4 or 5 years.
With that particular building, that was more than the recession, I think, but that's the singular example. But when I said they're springing up, we do have more towers going up in this city than anywhere else in North America. So
do.
they are going up. So it would appear quickly because they're in all different points of development, and it just you start to wonder, how can you put so many bodies? How will we ever have enough bodies to fill them all once they're all done?
Right, well, that's a good point. So 2 things happened in Toronto in the last 15 years. First thing was we created a green belt around the city. So single-family home buyers can no longer buy within 2 hours of Toronto. So that's sort of changed the mindset of home buyers saying, maybe I don't want to live 2 hours, I don't want to live in Barrie and commute to my job in Toronto. I'd rather live in the GTA and commute to my job maybe half an hour away. So that created a sort of an unnatural interest in condos that wouldn't otherwise have happened if we continued to sprawl the city out to that green belt. And the second thing is that every year Toronto sees 100,000 new citizens move here, and we are the fastest growing city from that standpoint in North America. So we should, because of these 2 factors, be a very fast growing city when it comes to condos being created. And I don't think people realize that. Also, we have a need for about 30,000 new homes to be built, 30 to 40,000 new homes to be built in Toronto. And in 2000, we built 10,000 condos and 30,000 single-family homes. Today, we build 20,000 condos and 20,000 single-family homes. There's been a shift away from stick and brick to high-rise because of demand.
Right. Brad Lamb, thank you so much. He's a real estate expert. Good to talk to you this morning.
Thank you.